We've already built it. We didn't have to do anything extra. Now we just built persistent queries and dropped it. So it was very quick, right? And that's the biggest payoff here, is now I have a secure API layer and I can curate it. I'm not just authenticating it. I'm also authorizing every data element that I'm exposing outside, not just to an API, but also to my AI agents, right?
Praga, Senior Principal Architect at American Airlines.
Hey, Dan. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here.
I was just thinking that I spent almost 20 years at Expedia, and when I joined, one of the first things they did during orientation was they taught us a class on how the airline systems work. And chapter 1 was Sabre, which was IBM and American together a long time ago. So sitting here with an American Airlines architect, it's kind of a fun one. I don't know if we're going to get into fair filing classes and CAT 31 and PNRs, but
we are definitely not going to reveal insider secrets about fair filing.
Well, that was a good try. Let's start with Sabre. American Airlines, and IBM came together 60 years ago. You're now in your 100th year. Is that right for American Airlines?
That is correct. It's 100 years this year. It was a big celebration.
Yeah.
We're all excited, and it was very interesting. The leadership is way more excited, and we are looking at how do we exist for another 100 years, right? And I think it was great that it aligned with all the AI. It seems to be like you're at the right place at the right time.
It does, but it also sets up a perfect sort of first question, which was, I think a lot of successful companies that have been around for a long time have a core piece, a system of record, a legacy piece of technology. How do you approach modernizing a platform when you have a component in it that is either, so complicated or not in your direct control? How did you approach that?
Sabre is still our main source of truth when it comes to reservations, right? It's still a green screen, although now they have provided us with a lot of API layer on top. But it's still some an external vendor, like you mentioned, right? So what happens here is the rate of change is slow for us. It could have been acceptable, 20 years ago, but now the rate at which we need to change is much faster. Traditionally, the way we have handled it is, okay, Sabre would take some time to make the change. What it meant was each of the different product teams would now build another set of rules and layer on top. And now you end up getting disconnected rules and disconnected messages to customers. And if you need to make a call to Sabre to expose your business capabilities, for example, it ends up being multiple calls. It's not easy. And unless we came into Graph was actually fantastic in solving that problem, right? What do I mean by that is we can have Graph sitting in front of it. And now what Apollo gives us is not just a router that is now sitting on top of all of our domains, but it also allows us to have a caching layer, right? The key here is the change of values, right? We could now have this reading layer, the layer in which it is being read can be the graph and the cache, whereas you still are going to the main source of truth for transactional changes. So it allows us to disconnect us from Sabre when it comes to customer experience.
Makes a lot of sense. That's sort of so that tells us a story about why you invested in the graph. You were looking at it from terms of, aggregating or orchestrating across those different domains and the caching advantages that you mentioned. But that's the platform story. You've got travelers and features that the product teams are always wanting you to deliver, and competitors that you have to keep up with. How did your Graph API platform choice affect the traveler's customer experience, the UI, if you will?
So if you look at a customer now, they are talking to you through multiple channels, right? And each customer has their own needs. So it becomes very important for us to have a consistent experience. What do I mean by that, right? You cannot be sending one message in an app versus what they see in the web, right? And now, how did this truly affect us is because we are now able to do more personalization with the graph, right? So if you're a guest, now I know that you're a guest. I can traditionally send you some information, right? Change your experience, like how Amazon does, what kind of content I showed you. But when you're logged in, the content can completely change and be personalized for you, right? How do I do that? Because we now have customer data that is part of our super graph. And now the developer that is working on that experience doesn't have to go to multiple APIs. He just looks at it. Hey, if a person is logged in, I need these pieces of information so that I can change his experience. Your customer is not just experiencing them in your channels, right? You have partner channels that you expose your experiences in. But you just cannot now go and say, hey, have my REST API, and this is how you connect. Right now, I've exposed my entire business. I could have multiple partners, and we may want to have different experiences for each of the partner. We don't want one partner to see what we're exposing to another partner, right? So that's where the variant kicks in that Apollo router has. Now we are able to have that external partner variant, an internal variant, and that is kind of key for us to solve that traveler experience.
So you just mentioned schema contracts. This is where you can have a variant of the graph that's tailored for a particular use case, right? So they see a subset. You talked about a partner example for that. What I find interesting about that is the architecture is not just enabling better customer experience, better traveler experiences, but actually helping your product and your business teams be more effective in the marketplace. It's a perfect segue because you made the investment in that API platform layer for the reasons you described in the graph to solve the traveler problems and some business problems. And then the AI moment happened.
You've seen where some companies are very cautious about it. They focus on internal efforts, whereas some companies go very crazy and get into trouble, right?
Yeah.
What has been fantastic about AI is they have been very intentional about it, right? How do I create customer engagement products with AI, right? That is where the true potential of AI shines through. How do you engage with customers to where they need to be met, right? And what value you can add. And in order to do that in this arena, you have to go across domains, across journeys. It's not like one team sitting in isolation and building a product. So that's where you have all these efforts that spans across multiple journeys, and you need to have consistent experience, right? It's already probabilistic, the agents, and you don't want hallucinations. You want deterministic outcomes. And my AA leadership has been very intentional about it. So it's been great. Where we are also invited to brainstorm as we deliver or talk through features and its capabilities and what agents can be doing for that. Yeah, that has been a good experience so far.
We're going to talk, I think, in a minute I'm going to ask you about how the graph as a platform really does serve those AI use cases. But let's bring it to you personally. How deeply are you involved in these new AI efforts, and why?
If you have to build something in 90 days that spans across multiple domains, across channels, you don't need somebody who has visibility across and has relationships across these different product teams. And my role has been in A.com's platform architect, right? My scope is broad. It's not like I'm working on one product feature. Me and my team, we are more focused on how should front end work, how should backend APIs deliver, the data. Then we are looking at analytics. How do you collect data about customers, right? What kind of content do you deliver? How do you deliver from the edge to the infrastructure to the actual APIs and data? I have visibility across, right? So I think that played a big role. And of course, the graph, right? That's our team owns the graph ecosystem. What it meant is, in order to onboard graph, you would have seen it across different companies that you worked with. It is a lift, right? It needs a lot of color. It's very easy technically, right? You guys made sure of that. But when it comes to implementing it, you have to collaborate with multiple teams. You have to sell it to them. They all have to see the value behind it.
That's right.
So all that effort that we had done in the last 2 years to build that relationships and camaraderie, and where people have already seen the value, I feel like that helped big time.
And so you've got a couple of these that have already gone to prod. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then a few more coming. Without giving any sort of secrets away, what kinds of areas are you applying? You mentioned context and improving the traveler experience, personalization, I think. But can you just give us a little sense of the kinds of initiatives that you were able to build on top of the graph?
Let me think through that, because otherwise you will make it 13 years and be done. Well, so to give you details about that without too much specifics, right? And again, it goes back to personalization. That is key, right? And what kind of offers do I provide my customers, right? And okay, what kind of situation is a customer in, right? That's key, because you don't want to be selling products to a customer when his journey is disrupted, right? That's the fastest way to alienate it, right? In order for us to do this right, or the agents to do it right, you need a deterministic layer. And you just don't need deterministic layer. You need a connected layer so that the agent can come and say, okay, hey, I need to provide this particular offer to this customer, but let me go figure out what kind of journey he's going through, right? And that's where the graph ended up being the tooling layer, the MCP on graph, right? It gives you your deterministic layer as a business capability. You're not just giving an API, you're actually giving business capabilities from one place via the graph, right? And where does this shine? If you really see, is when it comes to original supergraph, and especially companies like AA, where you have millions of bot attacks every other day, security and resiliency becomes key for us, right? So that's our biggest focus, and we built a lot of security on top of the graph, right? And a lot of things, governance comes natively with the whole Apollo router, where we could have scopes. I could have multiple authentication providers, and and then the beauty of the MCP is now it sits in front of the router. It's kind of a local call, but I still don't need to expose everything.
Yeah,
that was a key moment for us to choose this particular solution, because now in the concept of persisted queries have been taken to the next level. Now I can have specific persisted queries, and all I need to do is create a small list in your studio and just attach it to the MCP server, right? Nothing else. I don't need to write an MCP tool. I just have to attach it. The only thing that we have to write is tool description, which everybody else has to do. And that's how we are using the graph and MCP
That architecture makes total sense to me. Obviously, a little bit biased. What are the mistakes that you see others who are using a different architecture? Maybe putting MCPs up in front of traditional APIs without that context layer. What are the mistakes that show up there?
As soon as you talk about AI to engineers, we all want to build it. Everybody wants to be part of that whole AI engineering wave, right? And one key mistake people do, or the first thing they start doing, is start building MCP tools.
Yeah.
right? And I felt like, okay, that seems to be their shortest path to doing something with Gen AI, but it introduces the same BFF problem, right? If I have to peel that back, what are you going to do? You're now going to take your tools, right, your APIs, and you're going to put an MCP. You probably are going to take a fast MCP and put it on top of it,
Yeah.
right? And then you're going to expose that to the AA agent, right? The problem with that is now who's going to ensure that MCP is up to security standard, right? MCP protocol is great, but the rate of change is also very high, right? New security protocols, all of that exist, which Apollo has been consistent in ensuring they're all met, right? Any vulnerabilities that happens, we just reach out to you in Slack, or you guys are on top of it already. If not, you're willing to fix it, and that has been fantastic for us. And to add to this, right? The other issue is you cannot just take all your APIs and wrap it around a tool and then give it. Right now, you're just giving your entire kingdom, keys, to these agents, AI agents, and the problem becomes even worse if companies start engaging with vendors and you start exposing it in their MCPs, and that's where I think we should really peel back and look at MCP as a cross-cutting concern. That is not really AI engineering, right? If you really want to become an AI engineer, you need to possibly look at, okay, how do I use the existing models? How do I tune the existing models that are going to answer my questions correctly? And basically, in one short sentence, you should focus on agent building so that it understands your business capabilities, so that it can answer the customer's need, rather than focusing on just another cross-cutting concern, which is MCP, right? And that's where I think it's a mistake. There's a lot to learn and explore. If I have to say one thing to developers, don't waste your time on MCPs. Don't go focus on,
It's a great spicy take, and it's what I'm hearing you say is it's not that there's anything wrong with MCP, and it's not that MCP is the problem, but if you think of the problem only from the perspective of the MCP interface and not what's underneath it, you miss a really important part of the stack, which is that those tool interfaces are only as good as what's behind.
Just to add an additional comment in there, right?
Yeah.
What I really want to double down is, as engineers who have been software developers, for us, or even non-engineers, right? Because that's what they're selling per se. You just go build an agent, everything will work out of the box. It doesn't. When rubber meets the road, when it has to be right, especially when it's customer facing, there's a lot of work in order to perfect that agent. Just creating an agent behind just another MCP to a set of tools. It works great in your laptop. You put it in front of millions of customers. And if that thing starts hallucinating, it's a big problem. So that's why I wanted to say, hey, focus on perfecting your agents. That is a big field in itself. Let's get strong in that, rather than focusing on, let these be cross-cutting concerns. Let somebody else handle it. Here, you guys are handling it. And I'm happy that I don't have to deal with just another vulnerability that I need to go fix in a tool.
Let me turn this to a final thought, which was, I'm seeing this pattern now all across our customers, which is that architects and leaders that invested in an API tier, happens to be in GraphQL, really a sort of a layer that unifies and provides context across their business, and started from that API platform angle. And then now they're being tapped to lead their AI programs, right? And you're living that, not just being tapped, but you're valid. It's a real strong vote of confidence that your leadership has in you. What's it feel like to see a long-term bet pay off? And do you have any advice for others who would like to also be involved in the AI initiatives to come?
Well, in one sentence, right, or one word feels vindicated is the word that I would use, right? It was a long journey. It all started with the core need to remove duplication and just get developers to focus on actually building the features that we really care about. And that's where it all started, right? And then it started making more sense as having this graph, which can be now going back to it being the deterministic layer on top of the business capabilities, right? The key is your source of truth is still the source of truth, but you're building determinism on top of your source of truth. And that is very important in this agent world. Do not underestimate the hallucination of agents, right? The context rot. There's so many. I could probably do a separate podcast just on that, right?
Absolutely.
But yes. So I would think about the value proposition, right? Because to the other architects, you got to be in the AI layer. You have a lot of work to do there. So make sure you have a concrete API layer, right? That can respond fast with all the caching that you can do. And the other key thing is when it comes to AIs, you have to be thinking cross-domain, cross journeys, cross channels. It's going to be across. It's not just going to be one product. So the level of collaboration that is needed is going to be very high in order to be successful, right? So that is what I would suggest, right? So that's where the whole super graph and domain teams that creates that partnership that forces collaboration, to be honest with you. And it is, it removes isolation from product teams, and you now are working across. And yeah.
So we've talked about all this access to the information, the cross-cutting, and the determinism, but you've also got a security concern there, right? How do you think about that, and why is that important?
Well, you know why security is important.
Yes, we do. We do.
The service providers need two things, right? The first thing is visibility to the data that they're serving, what data is being used by and by whom, right? And that's where security comes in, where I can now go and put scopes on each and every data element in the graph, right? When I do that, now I have protected my entire business layer, right? And anybody who wants to use it, they still come to one place, but they request the data that they need, and we provide them with the right scopes, right? Now, even if you accidentally expose your schema, you've not exposed any of your data, right? If you take it one step further, put it in MCP layer, right? Now I have multiple persistent query list, curated list that I expose. But now I can determine using these scopes what list I expose to certain agents, right? You don't want somebody coming to ask an agent, hey, change my reservation, and the agent just says cancel the reservation and be done, right? The level of access that you give can be controlled directly in the router, which has already been there for us. It was just, you've already built it. We didn't have to do anything extra. Now we just built persistent queries and dropped it. So it was very quick, right? And that's the biggest payoff here that we probably didn't discuss all the rest of the thing is now I have a secure API layer and I can curate it. I'm not just authenticating it. I'm also authorizing every data element that I'm exposing outside, not just to an API, but also to my AI agents, right? So that becomes key. And especially, again, it's just everybody wants to hit the site, scrape the data, and it's easy for you to expose the PII information or PCI information. And yeah, so that's where it becomes key for us. Yeah.
Praga, thanks for spending all the time with us and sharing how your platform investment has paid off, how it is going to pay off. I think that security point there at the end is as important as anything else we've talked about today. And it's so exciting to watch what you're doing with it at AI. Thanks again for sharing all this with us today. And we look forward to seeing the other 90-day AA features that are coming out on AI in the weeks to come.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the time to talk through all these things. Yes, we are excited. We're nervously excited. There's a lot to learn. The rate of change is extremely high. And thank you for being on top of this whole agentic experience where you guys have come and said, hey, MCP makes sense to be sitting on top of the graph and ensuring that you're keeping it up to the protocols, security protocols, and all the features. I really appreciate the partnership with Apollo. I think our entire organization does appreciate the partnership that you guys have provided to us in order for us to be successful. So thank you once again for that and for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Perfect place to end. Thanks again, Praga. And look forward to talking to you again soon.